You're listening to Good Morning Marlow on MarlowFM 97.5.
At the moment, of course, we are living in the winter, and we're also, in addition, living under lockdown restrictions because of the dreadful virus and the pandemic. So what I've been saying earlier on the show was, I guess that this year, more than any other year, the immune system and boosting the immune system is probably more important. But of course, it's something we always look at winter, isn't it, Matt, the immune system?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that comes under scrutiny a bit more in the winter. People tend to think about it more, and as you say, I guess in the circumstances as they are at the minute, it's a little bit more on everyone's mind.
Right. So what I think we can do as part of the Health and Fitness Show now is to tell people listening some advice that you can give, because I know this is an area that you look into a lot. Some advice you can give maybe around the foods people can do, or if not, can eat and drink, or the activities they can do to help boost their immune system, which hopefully should have the effect of keeping away from any nasties, and if any nasties do invade, then help get rid of them.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, we can do that. I mean, I think it's always important to remember you can't 100% control things, control your immune system. You can't ever make yourself 100% immune from things, but you can certainly reduce your susceptibility. You can help optimize immune function and also not only kind of, hopefully reduce susceptibility to getting things, but improve your body's ability to fight things if you're to pick up bugs. And we're always picking up things and bugs and fighting things off. So the healthier we are, the better that immune system functions, the more likely you are to avoid things and to fight them off quickly and easily if you pick them up.
And as you say, it's very good that the same things that you can eat and do that will prevent you getting them will also get rid of them or help get rid of them if you accidentally do to catch these nasties. Yeah,
it's kind of a really easy method. I mean, with the immune system, you can't necessarily. There are certain things, and we can talk about a few that are, lined up at looking at just protecting the immune system itself. But in general, the healthier you are, the healthier your immune system. Right. So if you can look at, all the general health things that hopefully are being brought to the forefront of people's minds a bit at the minute, the benefit of that is not only do you improve your immune system, but you're likely to improve your, body composition, mental health, etc., etc.
Right, so the first thing, the first tip is try to be more healthy overall, in general terms, such and not specifically for the immune system, not targeting that, but just being more healthy in your life is going to help you when it comes to fighting off these nasties.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's an easier way to look at it in terms of, rather than worry about every little specific thing and immune system, the healthier you are, the better everything, unless you've got specific, ailments or things going on with yourself, the healthier you are, the better those things are gonna work. And so we can look at some key topics that, the areas that we always tend to look at when we're looking at health, which is no different in terms of looking at the immune system, would be things like nutrition, as you already mentioned, sleep, daily movement, and stress management. And so maybe we can look at a few topics, a few bits of each of them. And if you can manage those things, then you're likely to be quite healthy and your immune system will function well as a result.
I think that's great categorisation there. You've got 4 overall categories of things that you can just look at to try and improve, which will, as you say, both help you boost your immune system, but also make you more healthy generally as well.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. And I think just by, I think people will be shocked at how, if you focus on those kind of 4 areas and do little bits in each, how healthy you can feel and how well your immune system will work. And I think it also works the other way, that it's surprising that just, losing sight of sleep, of nutrition, of some daily movement and some stress, which funny enough is a real cocktail at the minute. It's very easy to do that with the lockdown restrictions, how much that can stack up and end up actually hindering your immune system.
So getting one thing right tends to lead to getting another thing right.
Yeah. And you don't have to do huge amounts of each. If you can get, a reasonable amount of sleep, a reasonable amount of nutrition, a bit of movement, keep the stress under control, that can really, really mount up to big things. And if you lose sight of those things, it can quickly kind of snowball the other way too.
Oh, great advice. Let's come back to your list of 4 overall categories. I think the first one you mentioned was nutrition, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I think nutrition is a fairly big one. With the immune system. So, I mean, there's kind of general, and then there's some specifics we could look at. So I think generally you just want to make sure that you're eating nutritious foods. I think it's really important sometimes the wording around diet. There's words like good and clean, which tends to result in there being foods that are bad, and dirty, I guess, would be the opposite of clean. And I think that can make people, worried and nervous. I think that what you want to look at, especially during this time, winter and the lockdown conditions, is can you eat foods that are, nurturing to the body, nutritious to the body, supportive of what you want to do? So if you are aiming at improving your immune system, which foods can we eat that will support that? And the more nutrition your body has, which usually means the best quality food you can eat, the more supported you'll be. So I think that's, rather than writing about all the individual what's, if you can eat really nice, nutritious, supportive food, that's a great start. And I think secondly, everyone wants to try to aim at an appropriate amount of calories. So because that will, you don't want to eat too few. You've got to eat enough calories to support the body. Because if your body is lacking the ability to rebuild itself after, a workout, or, just sustain itself through the daily activities you're doing, it's not going to have the excess energy, the excess things it needs to fight things off. So if you're not eating enough calories, you're not giving the body enough sort of fuel to function, it's going to miss things. It's not going to be able to fight things. It's not going to be able to do its job well enough. So simply eating good amounts of nutritious foods, the right amounts for you, and that means not eating too much either. A good body composition. We're not talking about athletes or bodybuilding, but just, a healthy, BMI or body fat percentage, however you want to think of it, or just weight in general, will really help. So eating good nutritious foods and eating an appropriate amount of calories. And then we can look at some specific groups if you'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff you're saying so far. I mean, it always strikes me as it's quite a narrow a path to walk to get the right amount of calories. But certainly if you get good quality food, that helps. So you can be a little way off that path, a little way off the exact calorie number you need if the food you're getting is of high quality and is nutritious and good for you. But you need to be fairly accurate, because you don't want to start putting weight on, you don't want to start putting extra fat on, and equally you don't want to have an insufficient number of calories that cause you to lose weight and not have, as you say, the resources the body needs to boost the immune system. So it's quite a narrow path. But as we were saying, if you eat healthy, nutritious food, then that path can be a bit wider.
I think so. And I think you're right. And I think it can almost be off-putting in terms of, what are you going to do? Are you going to count every calorie you put in? How are you going to measure it? There's some newer ways that we tend to use in terms of sort of hand size and portions that can give you ideas. I think to really make it easy for people, though, if you eat nutritious foods, they're much harder to binge on. It's much easier to kind of get a sense of, if you're eating a salad, or, salads might be the most boring healthy option I can think of. But if you're eating a normal sort of roast dinner, meat and veg dinner, it's much harder to go overboard with that stuff than it is with desserts, with, alcohol, with other things. So I think that's always a good start. And someone once gave me a bit of advice, which I always quite liked, was, if you can't be bothered with calorie counting, or if it's too difficult, if you roughly aim for 80% full most of the time.
Yeah.
So you're eating, you're satisfied, but you're not full to the brim, then that's probably enough. That's probably about right. And if you eat slowly and you eat nutritious, like wholesome foods, you'll probably get a sense of, I'm done. I've eaten enough to satisfy my hunger, but I'm not so full that I need to kind of lay down. And usually, that done most of the time will probably get you there.
Absolutely. I love your phrase about that no one's ever binged food on lettuce before. No one's ever eaten lettuce. No,
I don't think so. I think people eat that. We tend to eat, when you're eating the nutritious, wholesome food, you tend to eat what you need, and that's it. And that's not to say that you can't eat, tasty, binge-worthy stuff. But if that's in the house all the time and that's on the plate all the time, that's very easy then to get into, we've eaten too much of it. As I'm sure off the back of Christmas, everyone, including myself, has experienced.
Absolutely. So let's come on to some food specifics. I think you have a few that you want to mention.
Yeah, so I think some kind of fairly well-known but worth going over food categories. these often are looked at as like strengthening and supporting the white blood cells, which are important in the immune system of battling things off. So firstly, you've got protein. I think protein is quite an often underlooked food category. People often talk about, fats and carbs, and that's often in terms of, weight management. And, protein often, I think, gets lumped into bodybuilding. They're the people that need to worry about eating protein. But they're, a really essential building block of antibodies. So if you're not eating a reasonable amount of protein, your body is going to, struggle due to the antibodies and stuff which help us fight off things. So protein's a good one to start with. Obviously, there are loads of sources of where you get your protein from. You can get, it from meat and stuff. Obviously, vegetarians can get protein from different sources, beans, lentils, other places. Nuts and dairy have sources of protein. If you're short on protein, there's good quality protein supplements. Which can be a bit of a minefield. There are also some very bad ones, yes. But it doesn't take too much searching to find some good alternatives. So I think proteins are a good one to start with. Obviously, quite well known ones: vitamin C and vitamin D. So vitamin C. Sorry.
Vitamin C is well known for the immune system. I remember taking it from when I was a very little boy just to help fight off the colds and flu.
Yeah, I think vitamin C is probably the most well-known one, but worth, reiterating. Vitamin D is probably, that's been talked about a lot in the news over the last year or so, I guess, with there seem to be quite good results with vitamin D, helping to build up the immune system and being important in the fight against coronavirus and stuff. And I think vitamin D is an important one to think about because probably right now, especially with the weather in the UK, people aren't getting enough vitamin D. I mean, it's usually recommended that if you don't live that near to the equator that you take a vitamin D supplement, and we're certainly not near the equator and we're certainly not spending that much time outdoors at the minute. But it's a really important one in terms of the immune system. So vitamin D is often something that I'm not a huge advocate of supplements. I don't take sort of a lot myself, but I do take vitamin D supplement. And having spoke to numerous nutritionists through the years, that's usually the one that they say most people could benefit from because it's very hard to get adequate amounts of vitamin D in this country, and certainly in the winter, and certainly, with lockdown conditions and stuff now, it's probably something people are struggling with.
At the moment, it's very easy to be deficient in it, isn't it? So definitely one to go to go on your shopping list.
And the other two that I think are sort of known for the immune system is zinc.
Yeah.
Not necessarily well known. People don't often talk about how much zinc they're eating. But zinc's actually quite a cool one to talk about because if you eat kind of the well-rounded nutritious foods we were talking about, your zinc kind of will be taken care of without really thinking about it. You get good amounts of zinc in things like chickpeas and lentils and beans, and you get a good amount of zinc through meat and through dairy. So if you're eating a well-balanced diet, zinc being very important for the immune system, but not something you necessarily have to think about because it should be taken care of. But I thought that was an interesting one to throw in because it is important, but actually it's a nod to just eating nutritiously, and it's something you don't have to think about.
Exactly. It's not something I ever think about, but I do try to eat nutritiously, so I presume I get my zinc from that, although I don't check it. As you say, it's something you don't have to worry about too much. If you have a balanced, well-nutritious diet, then you're okay on your zinc, typically.
Yeah, you'll get it. The secondary reward is that you will be eating enough zinc if you eat a well-rounded diet. And then the last one, which again is probably the second most recommended supplement from sort of nutritionists and people, is omega-3s. Really important in helping sort of reduce inflammation and stuff. And again, it can be, you can obviously get good amounts of omega-3s through fish and things, but I think it's something that in people's diet they lack a little bit of, especially if you're vegetarian, which is more and more popular these days.
Yep.
And there are really good vegetarian and vegan options for omega-3s now. It used to be that it was just fish oils, which obviously doesn't necessarily help a vegetarian or a vegan, but now you can find really good alternatives. So I think vitamin D and omega-3s are something that very important in the immune system strengthening, and something that we don't necessarily get, the average person doesn't necessarily get enough of. So they're two worth considering
Possibly getting the supplements for, yeah.
Yeah, as well as protein, if that's not something that, again, if you happen to be a vegetarian or something like that, then that would fall into that category as well.
What else can we do in our daily lives? Maybe I think you mentioned sleep was a good category to talk about.
Yeah, I think sleep is often one of the most underrated aspects of health there is. And obviously that ties into the immune system very closely, and not getting enough really, lowers our ability to defend ourselves. So it's not a surprise really that, people go through a bit of sort of sleep deprivation. They don't get enough. You start picking up the sniffles and things really quite quick. So I think it's important to get enough sleep. So usually you're looking at, 7 to 9 hours, roughly somewhere within there. It does change a little bit through different stages of your life. Usually when you're younger, you need more. And as you get older, slightly less. But each individual will change. Some people do really well off 7, some people do well off 9. Some people are outside of that boundary, but it's small percentages. Yeah. So when you hear of people, like surviving, well, there's also thriving and surviving. So people can survive off of less than 7 hours sleep. And with a newborn baby, I can testify to I am surviving on less sleep, but not necessarily thriving the way I was when I was getting 8 hours sleep a night. So I think people often get conned by, people. There are those stories of people having like really small amounts of sleep each night. And, maybe they did thrive on it. Maybe they were just an outlier. Maybe they were just surviving. But most people are going to, function their best at 7 to 9 hours. You also want good quality sleep. So you don't want it broken up, as much as you can. I mean, waking up in the night due to a loud sound or a bang, that's normal, or just rolling over. But kind of long periods of being awake through the night, we don't necessarily want. There's also a huge benefit to going to bed before midnight. So quite simple, if you can get to bed before midnight, get between 7 and 9 hours sleep, and make it kind of good quality. So, signs of good quality sleep are falling asleep fairly easily, not waking up too many times through the night, not having to get up and pee a lot during the night, not having to be up, for hours in the night, and waking up well rested. And if you're doing those things, then your immune system should be quite well supported. But I think in lockdown conditions, it's really easy to stay up a little bit longer, not worry about going to bed. I should think people's bedtimes maybe have, eased backwards slightly. So it would be quite easy to take your eye off the ball with sleep at the minute.
But maybe on the other hand, people don't need to get up quite so early for anything. They haven't got a train to catch to get to town or something, or haven't got to drive into the office, or some of them won't be able to work from home. So it could well be that at the other end of the day, people are lying in just a little bit longer. I always think turning the alarm clock off and waking up naturally rather than being woken up by the alarm clock is really quite helpful as well. But again, that doesn't really cover the quality aspect of the sleep. But you might get some longer sleep at that morning rather than the evening.
I think I do. I mean, I used to have the idea. Again, hopefully I can go back to it one day of at least one day a week not having an alarm. Just let your body do what it wants, and if it happens to want to catch up a little bit in sleep and you get a 10-hour sleep or whatever it is, then that's fine. And if it doesn't, if it wakes up early, but I think the before midnight thing is that's where the body does. Obviously, where we sleep is where we do a lot of repairing, a lot of rebuilding. So it's where your body can fight off a lot of these things. I mean, it's no coincidence that when you feel poorly, most people want to have stay home from work or from school or whatever it is and have a sleep and rest. So you want to do that before you get ill. So as I say, we're always fighting things off. We're always rebuilding and repairing. And by going to bed earlier, you try to follow the rhythm of the sun as much as you can. Obviously, no one's going to bed at 5 o'clock in the evening at the minute, but the more you can follow it if you go to bed before midnight, the more repairing your body can do. There seems to be a lot of studies that show we do quite a lot of repair work before kind of midnight. Yeah. So you don't want to miss out on that repairing time.
So get to bed nice and early and have a nice, natural, long sleep. Wake up when your body wants you to, not when the alarm clock says you should.
That would be, ideal. And, okay, a lot of us have got to wake up to alarms the majority of the week maybe, but if you can, negate that by going to bed a bit earlier, and then when you can wake up naturally, do so, the immune system will thank you for it.
Right. What about people, perhaps more at this time than usually, drinking a bottle of beer or sharing a bottle of wine or something in the evening before going to sleep? Is alcohol going to help a good quality sleep, and is that going to in turn help the boosting of the immune system?
No. Well, no. In black and white answers, no. So alcohol is an interesting one. If you look at it in terms of, a food group, it's quite, high calorie. And so it would fall into the starchy carbohydrate, the sugary end of things. And that as a food group doesn't really help us with sleep. So if you take away, the idea of alcohol, and obviously there's a lot of debate around it, and, people love a drink in the evening and stuff. And I'm not, no one's here to judge or anything like that. But if you just take it for what it is, which is quite a, high calorie, sugary thing, we could then label it like desserts, like other things. If you have them late in the day, it can mess with your blood sugar levels, and that can disturb your sleep. So is there anything wrong with having some wine in the evening? Not necessarily. Does it help with good sleep? No. It's not a good contributing factor to sleep. Does that mean you can't have any? No, absolutely not. But maybe earlier in the evening, maybe not as much as maybe sometimes you do. And if you're having sleep issues, then that's something maybe to leave out of your diet momentarily.
Yeah, altogether, yes. Yeah. Maybe earlier and maybe not quite so frequently, maybe not every day.
Absolutely. I mean, there are plenty of studies to show that there are some studies to show that there's some health benefits to the odd glass of wine and stuff, but there's numerous studies to show that heavy drinking jeopardizes health. And if heavy drinking jeopardizes health, then the immune system must be tied into that. So it's not to knock drinking. It's just to use it appropriately, I guess.
Good points. Well, I mean, a lot of people might take a little drop of wine to help with their stress, and that sort of brings me to the next point. One of your categories is stress management, I think. We're talking about stress management now for help boosting the immune system.
Yeah, so in terms of linking it to the immune system, if we suffer with kind of high stress levels, and I think it's really important to try and interject a definition of stress. So anything that kind of excites the body's what we call sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, anything that raises cortisol levels and stuff, it's considered a stress. So that means you can have positive stress, right? Exercise is a positive stress, but it is a stress. A roller coaster might be, for a lot of people might be really fun, a fun thing to do, but hurtling along and doing loop-loops is stressful. It will spike adrenaline and stuff, which is why people want to do it. But it's stressful. So stress doesn't necessarily mean bad. You don't have to be going through bad times to have stress. You could just have a lot of good stuff going on, and your cortisol levels would come up, and we would consider yourself stressed. The higher that our cortisol levels, the more susceptible to things like illnesses and stuff we become. And that's the link into the immune system, that it's basically weakening your body. And you can link it to exercise. The exercise over the long term can strengthen your immune system. But momentarily while you're exercising and just after, you've actually lowered your immune system because it's a stress. Yeah. And your cortisol levels have gone up. Hence why there's a big debate about whether you should work out when you're sick. And, there are different answers to that, and you can probably get away with a bit of exercise. But at the end of the day, while you're exercising, you're actually lowering your immune system. So if you're trying to fight something off, probably exercising at the same time, not necessarily the best thing to do. But over the long term, obviously exercising is a great thing to do. So if your cortisol levels are high, we want to try and manage them to bring them back down. Alcohol, as we kind of said a minute ago, good or bad, is slightly more stressful on your body than water. If you put alcohol in, it has to be broken down more. It has to be dealt with by the body. So it puts more stress on. So if you're really operating at, high stress level, adding more stress, although psychologically really helpful, and you probably will feel nice, as you sip on the wine, physiologically, not necessarily helpful over the long term. Short term, yes, understandable. We all do it. Absolutely. Long term, not necessarily the best way to go, because you're just adding cortisol on top of cortisol. So you're adding, fuel to the fire, so to speak. So when we talk about stress management, what we're talking about is anything that tones down what we call the sympathetic nervous system and stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is also kind of known as the rest and digest system. When you're calm, you can rest well, you sleep well, and you digest food and everything much better. When you're on your fight or flight system, you don't digest things. That's why people, when they get really kind of nervous stuff, can feel sick, can feel nauseous, because your digestive system isn't working. So we want the parasympathetic nervous system to be working, and that stimulate. You want to think things that are spa-like, calm-like.
Right. Yep.
So, reading, a relaxing bath, massage, meditation, breathing, yoga, tai chi, anything that kind of is in that realm, that's going to help lower cortisol levels. So I know that some people, there are probably lots of people that find the idea of watching TV and having a glass of wine more relaxing in theory than doing a yoga class. But physiologically, looking at a screen and drinking wine is stressful on the system, whereas deep breathing and a bit of stretching is relaxing to the system. So you've got to find something that kind of ticks both boxes for you, that you actually enjoy, so you're not getting stressed out by having to do a yoga class or a Tai Chi that you don't want to, because that would be stressful. So it's going to be something you enjoy and something that's actually relaxing to the system.
And something that's beneficial as well, and something that's not going to make the immune system worse, because it's such an extreme activity and exercise that things are going to go worse rather than improve.
Yes, and that is not to knock the other things. That's not to knock having a glass of wine just to relax yourself. Yeah. And it's just looking at long-term solutions and things that, actually fundamentally are going to help from a physical level.
Right. And we're going to talk about exercise, but I think we've pretty much covered that already, haven't we? Because we're looking at non-stressful exercise, like you mentioned, yoga and relaxation level of exercise, rather than going to run a 5K as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah. I think that people should realise that when you're talking about, health and the immune system, fitness doesn't necessarily come into that. So seeing how fast you can run, because how fast you can run, how much weight you can lift, how athletic you can be, even saying it sounds stressful. You're clearly putting a strain on the body to see how fast you can go, to see how much you can lift, etc. So that's a kind of fitness for us is a separate entity to health. Movement, in terms of healthy movement, that's just getting the body moving, which is very applicable to this moment in time. But that's things like going out for a bike ride, going for a walk, just doing some stretching, walking about, moving about, not getting too stiff. The body fundamentally is a pump system. It works on pumping blood and all the nutrients we need around the body. So, but it needs to move to pump. So if you want the white blood cells and everything to move around the body and have the immune system working, we need to get it pumping, get it working. So going for a nice, walk for 20 minutes, that's a great way. That's a very natural, the body knows what that is, way of pumping blood and everything else around the body. So you really want to think about getting daily movement in. That's really important to, let's say you've had a good night's sleep, you've eaten all the right things, your stress is under control, but you still want the body to pump everything round in order for the white blood cells and the immune system to fight everything off. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to obliterate yourself doing heavy workouts and stuff at the minute, because, don't necessarily want to. People are, we're stressed as it is, but just going for, a walk or a bit of daily movement is really helpful.
That's brilliant. Matt, great advice as always. One final question, just come in from one of our listeners. Tony's been in touch, sent her a text message. Tony's asking, are there any particular breathing exercises that can help the immune system? Anything?
Yeah,
anything you can think about breathing? Yeah.
Breathing's a really interesting one. It would fall into the stress management side of things. We can stimulate both sides of our nervous system through breathing. So if you want to stimulate the fight or flight side, you could breathe very quick. So if you hear someone running fast, or when they're lifting weights, the big and it's that will come from your neck and your chest, and that will stimulate the stress side of things.
Yeah.
If you take deep breaths, so in and out through your nose if you can, and slow, if you can breathe, they say the magic number is around about 5.5 seconds in and 5.5 seconds out. So somewhere between 5 and 6 seconds for the breath in and 5 or 6 seconds out. And that will stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, your relaxing side of things. So if you ever find yourself a bit stressed and you can just take 10 breaths at kind of 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out through your nose, you'll feel yourself relax. And if you can do that through the evenings, maybe spend 5-10 minutes doing that, that's a really nice way to relax.
That's great. Great advice there, Matt. And I hope that helps answer your question, Tony. And before you go, Matt, once again, thanks again for coming on the show. Great advice. Perhaps you can just give a quick mention for your business. Anybody interested in finding out a little bit more about what you do and where to find you?
Yeah, so we're APS Fitness. You can find us at apsfitness.co.uk, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Come say hello.
That's brilliant. Matt, thank you so much. Speak to you very soon.
Thank you for having me, Chris.